The alarm screamed through the monitoring station like a dying star. Krelnix nearly dropped his data tablet as the sound pierced his 3 ears. In his 40 years of service at the edge of the Forbidden Zone, he had never heard this particular alarm. It meant only one thing. Something alive was inside the zone. His 6 fingers danced across the console with practiced speed, the screens filled with data that made his blood run cold. A ship, an actual functioning ship, was floating in the middle of the Forbidden Zone, where physics itself twisted into nightmares and reality broke apart like wet paper. No vessel had ever survived more than 3 minutes in that cursed space. The radiation alone should have melted any hull. The gravity distortions should have crushed any crew into paste. But this ship had been there for 47 hours. Krelnix zoomed in on the sensor readings. His hearts began to beat faster. The ship showed active life support, active engines on standby, active shields somehow holding against forces that had destroyed entire battle fleets. He ran the diagnostic 3 times, certain his equipment had malfunctioned. Each time the results came back the same. He pulled up the ship's identification signature. When he saw it, he understood why this was impossible. The vessel was human, a species that had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago. A species still considered primitive by most standards. A species that still used chemical rockets when they first made contact. The ship was called the Wandering Star. Registry showed it as a science vessel. Crew of 12, assigned to deep space mineral surveys in Sector 49. Sector 49 was nowhere near the Forbidden Zone. They had no business being here, no permission, no clearance, no possible way to survive. Krelnix reached for the emergency communication channel. His hand shook slightly. This news would shake the Council to its core. Within the hour, the Council chambers on the station erupted into chaos. Representatives from 47 species crowded the vast circular room, their voices rising in a dozen different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Fleet Commander Yargoth stood at the center platform, his massive form towering over most other species. His scales, dark blue and battle-scarred, caught the light as he raised one clawed hand for silence. The room gradually quieted. "Explain this again," Yargoth said, his voice like grinding stones. Slowly, Krelnix stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. A human vessel designated Wandering Star is inside the Forbidden Zone. It has been there for 49 hours now. All life signs are positive. The ship appears to be functioning normally. "Impossible," hissed Ambassador Silktar, her serpentine body coiling in agitation. "Our best shielding technology fails within minutes. The Forbidden Zone tears apart atomic bonds. It makes space itself unstable. Nothing survives there." "The humans are there," Krelnix repeated. "Surviving." "Perhaps they are already dead," suggested Council Member Frenlock, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. "Perhaps what we detect is merely the echo of a ship that died hours ago. The zone plays tricks with time." Krelnix had considered this. "I have monitored the ship continuously. It is moving. Small adjustments to position every few hours. Deliberate movements, calculated." The room fell silent at this. A dead ship did not make calculated movements. Yargoth turned to the tactical display that dominated one wall. The Forbidden Zone showed as a swirling mass of red and black on the screen, like a wound in space itself. In the middle of it, a tiny green dot marked the human ship. It looked so small, so fragile, so impossible. "What are they doing?" Yargoth asked quietly. Krelnix pulled up his analysis. "Based on their movement pattern, I believe they are mapping the zone." The room erupted again. Mapping the zone. As if it were merely an unexplored nebula, as if it were not the most dangerous region of known space, as if thousands had not died trying to understand its mysteries. Ambassador Veltron of the Wisdom Keepers stood slowly. His species was among the oldest in the Council, their civilization spanning millions of years. When he spoke, others listened. "The Forbidden Zone has stood for 3,000 years as a reminder of hubris," Veltron said, his aged voice carrying easily through the chamber. "The ancients tried to harness what lay within. They sent their greatest ships, their brightest minds. All were lost. We declared it forbidden not out of fear, but out of respect for forces beyond our control. And now these humans, these children who have barely learned to leave their own star system, dare to enter where we fear to go." "They did not ask permission," noted Silktar coldly. "Did they know they needed it?" asked Frenlock. The humans are still learning our ways. Perhaps they did not understand the danger. Yargoth made a sound that might have been a laugh. The humans always understand danger. They simply choose to ignore it. I have read their history. They climbed their highest mountains because they were there. They dove to their deepest oceans to see what lived below. They split atoms before they fully understood the consequences. Caution is not their way. Then they are fools, Silktar said. Perhaps, Yargoth agreed. Or perhaps they are something we have forgotten how to be. He turned to Krelnix. You said the ship is moving in patterns. Show me. Krelnix brought up a tracking display. Over the past 49 hours, the wandering star had traced a complex path through the zone. It was not random. It was methodical. They were taking readings at specific points, creating a three-dimensional map of the interior. They are studying it, Beltron whispered, awe creeping into his ancient voice. They are actually studying the unstudied. Yargoth made a decision. We cannot leave them there. Whether they are fools or heroes, they are members of the Council. We must attempt rescue. Rescue? Silktar's hood flared in alarm. Any ship we send will be destroyed. We will only add to the death toll. We must try, Yargoth insisted. Bring me our best scientists, our best engineers. If these humans have found a way to survive, perhaps we can learn from them and bring them home. Over the next 6 hours, the greatest minds of the Council gathered. They reviewed every piece of data. They analyzed the human ship's design. They ran simulations. They debated theories. And with each passing hour, they grew more confused. Dr. Halvin, chief physicist of the Council, stood before a holographic display showing the zone's properties. The Forbidden Zone operates on principles we still do not fully understand. Gravity fluctuates wildly. Space-time becomes fluid. Radiation spikes reach levels that should ionize any matter. And yet, he gestured helplessly at the green dot representing the human ship. They endure. Perhaps their shields are more advanced than we knew, suggested one engineer. Impossible, Dr. Halvin replied. We have examined human technology. It is clever, yes. Adaptive, certainly. But not advanced enough for this. They still use fusion reactors. We have had antimatter for 10,000 years. Then how? Demanded Yargoth. No one had an answer. Krelnix, who had been monitoring his station throughout the meeting, suddenly stood. Commander, I have something new. The room turned to him. The human ship is moving again. But this time, he pulled up the trajectory. They are moving toward the deepest part of the zone, the area where reality distortion reaches maximum levels, where our probe lasted only 43 seconds before disintegrating. The scientists stared at the display in horror. The humans were going deeper. They are committing suicide, Silktar declared. But Krelnix was not so sure. He had been watching the humans' movements for hours now. They were deliberate, careful. Each position they took had a purpose. They were not dying. They were exploring. Commander, Krelnix said slowly, I do not believe the humans are in distress. I believe they went into the zone intentionally. The room fell silent. Why would they do such a thing? Beltron asked. Krelnix pulled up the human ship's last recorded communication before entering the zone. It had been a simple message to their home station. Entering anomaly zone for study. Will maintain radio silence to avoid interference with readings. Expect contact in 72 hours. They knew. Frenlock breathed. They knew it was dangerous and went anyway. Not just dangerous, Dr. Halvin corrected. Forbidden. They had to have seen our warning beacons. They are in every known language, including human English. They chose to ignore them. Yargoth studied the display for a long moment. His military mind was trying to understand the strategy. What could be worth such a risk? What knowledge was valuable enough to bet one's life on? We assemble a rescue fleet, he finally declared. But we do not enter the zone. We position at the border and wait. If the humans emerge, we render any assistance needed. If they do not emerge within their stated 72 hours, He paused. What could they do? Send ships in to die alongside the humans. We will decide then, he finished. As the meeting dispersed and orders were given, Krelnix returned to his monitoring station. He brought up the feed from the wandering star again. The ship was now in the deepest part of the zone, where the sensors could barely maintain lock. The readings were almost incomprehensible. Space itself was folding and unfolding like breathing lungs. Time ran at different speeds in different places. Matter phased in and out of normal existence, and in the middle of it all a small human ship continued its work. Krelnix thought about what Yargoth had said, that the humans climbed mountains because they were there, that they explored oceans to see what lived below. That caution was not their way. He pulled up the human database entry, something he had read before but never truly considered. Humans had a saying, he discovered, a phrase they used when facing the unknown: fortune favors the bold. Krelnix watched the green dot on his screen, steady and determined in the heart of chaos. Perhaps, he thought, the humans understood something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Perhaps some things were worth the risk. Perhaps some knowledge could only be gained by those willing to step into the forbidden darkness. His console beeped. Another position update from the wandering star. Still moving. Still mapping. Still impossibly alive. Krelnix began a new report, his fingers moving quickly across the keys. The council would want to know everything, but as he wrote, he realized something that made his 3 hearts beat faster. The humans were not just surviving the Forbidden Zone. They were succeeding where the galaxy's greatest civilization had failed, and if they came out alive, everything would change. He looked at the green dot again, so small against the swirling chaos of the zone. What are you learning in there? He whispered to the screen. What secrets are worth your lives? The dot moved again, deeper still, and Krelnix could only watch and wait for whatever revelation the humans would bring back from the place where reality itself came undone. The Council rescue fleet gathered at the edge of the Forbidden Zone like nervous birds afraid to take flight. 15 ships from 8 different species, each representing the pinnacle of their civilization's technology, each one keeping a careful distance from the invisible boundary where normal space ended and chaos began. Fleet Commander Yargoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the unyielding truth staring at the tactical display. The human ship, the Wandering Star, was now 68 hours into the zone. 4 hours remained until their stated 72-hour deadline. 4 hours until they either emerged or were presumed lost forever. Still no contact? Yargoth asked his communications officer. None, Commander. We have tried all frequencies. Either they cannot hear us or they are maintaining their planned radio silence. Yargoth's claws tapped against the armrest of his command chair. The waiting was worse than battle. In battle, you acted. Here, he could only watch and hope. Dr. Halvin approached, his multiple limbs carrying data tablets. The physicist looked exhausted. Commander, we have completed our analysis of possible rescue scenarios. And? Dr. Halvin's expression said everything before his words did. There are no viable options. We have simulated 17 different approaches using every combination of our technologies. The longest any ship survives is 4 minutes and 12 seconds. After that, hull integrity fails completely. What if we use the Velkarn shielding? Yargoth suggested. Their shields have held against supernovas. We tried that simulation. The zone does not work like normal radiation or force. It attacks the fundamental structure of matter itself. Shields delay the inevitable by perhaps 90 seconds. No more. Yargoth felt his jaw tighten. To have ships and warriors ready but unable to help was its own form of torture. Then we wait. And if they do not emerge? Then we mourn, Dr. Halvin said quietly. And we add their names to the list of those lost to the zone. A commotion near the sensor station drew their attention. Krelnix was gesturing frantically at his screen. Commander, a new ship has entered the system. Human design, moving at maximum speed directly toward our position. Yargoth moved to the sensor display. Indeed, a human vessel was approaching fast. Too fast for a safe deceleration. Hail them, he ordered. The view screen crackled to life. A human woman appeared, her face hard with determination. She had short dark hair, intense brown eyes, and wore a uniform Yargoth recognized as human military. A captain's insignia showed on her collar. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Defiant Hope, she said without preamble. We received word that one of our ships is stranded in the Forbidden Zone. We are here to retrieve them. Yargoth felt a chill run through him. Captain Chen, you must understand the situation. The zone is not merely dangerous. It is lethal. No ship can survive inside for more than minutes. So I've heard, Chen replied. Her tone suggested she did not care. How long has the Wandering Star been inside? 68 hours and counting. Something flickered across Chen's face. Pride, perhaps. Or vindication. Then clearly, someone can survive it. Captain, Yargoth tried to keep his voice measured. We have assembled the Council's best rescue fleet. Our scientists have determined that rescue is impossible without losing more lives. With respect, Commander, your scientists are wrong. The bluntness of it shocked the bridge crew. Dr. Halvin's form flickered with indignation. Chen continued before anyone could protest. We have been analyzing the Council's database on the Forbidden Zone since we learned the Wandering Star entered it. We believe we understand why traditional approaches fail. You believe? Silktar's voice came over the communication channel from her own ship. You would bet your lives on a belief? We bet our lives every time we leave orbit, Chen replied simply. The question is whether the bet is calculated or foolish. We believe ours is calculated, Yargoth leaned forward. Explain your reasoning, Captain. Chen's image was replaced by a technical schematic. It showed the Defiant Hope with numerous modifications highlighted in blue. The Council approaches the zone with rigid shielding, Chen began. Force against force. You try to resist the zone's effects through brute power, but the zone is not a force to be resisted. It is a condition to be adapted to. Dr. Halvin studied the schematic. Those modifications. You have made your shields flexible. Adaptive? Exactly, Chen confirmed. Instead of trying to maintain a fixed shield frequency, we created a system that shifts and adjusts in real time. It flows with the zone's fluctuations rather than fighting them. Like, she paused, searching for a comparison, like moving with ocean waves instead of trying to stand rigid against them. Impossible, Dr. Halvin breathed. The calculations required would overwhelm any computer system. The zone's fluctuations are too rapid, too unpredictable. You are correct, Chen agreed. No computer can calculate it fast enough. That's why we are not using computers for the primary calculations. Silence filled the channel. What are you using? Krelnix asked, afraid he already knew the answer. Human intuition and reflexes, Chen said. Assisted by AI, yes, but ultimately guided by human perception and decision-making. We have 3 pilots working in concert, each responding to what they feel from the zone. It is not perfect, but we believe it will work long enough. Long enough for what? Yargoth demanded. To die alongside your comrades instead of alone? Chen's expression hardened. Long enough to bring them home. Commander, we have a principle in human culture, a rule that guides our military, our explorers, and our society. No one left behind. The Wandering Star crew knew the risks when they entered the zone, but they also knew that if they got into trouble, someone would come for them. That someone is us. This is madness, Silktar hissed. You will accomplish nothing but doubling the death toll. Maybe, Chen acknowledged. But we have to try, because the alternative is to abandon our people. And that is not who we are. Yargoth understood then. This was not about logic or calculations or scientific probability. This was about something deeper, something the Council species with their millions of years of civilization had perhaps lost somewhere along the way. I cannot order you to stand down, Yargoth said finally. You are not under my command, but I strongly advise against this course of action. Noted and appreciated, Commander, Chen replied. But we are going in. Defiant Hope out, the communication ended. On the tactical display, the human ship accelerated toward the Forbidden Zone's boundary. Should we stop them? His tactical officer asked. Yargoth considered it. He could disable their ship with a targeted shot, save them from their own recklessness. But he remembered the look in Chen's eyes. The absolute determination. If he stopped them now, they would only try again later. No, he said quietly. Let them go, and pray to whatever god still listen that their calculations are correct. The bridge crew watched in silence as the Defiant Hope approached the zone's edge. The boundary was not visible to the naked eye, but sensors marked it clearly, a line between order and chaos, between the known and the unknowable. The human ship did not slow down, did not hesitate. It crossed the boundary at full speed and plunged into the Forbidden Zone like a diver entering deep water. Krelnix's sensors immediately began screaming warnings. The zone's energies lashed at the human ship. Space twisted around it. Radiation levels spiked to lethal measurements. Hull integrity? Yargoth asked, his voice tense. Holding, Krelnix reported, surprise evident in his tone. Shields are fluctuating wildly, but they are holding. On the display, the Defiant Hope dove deeper. Its path was not straight. It weaved and curved, following some pattern that made no logical sense. It looked almost like a dance, graceful and purposeful. They are doing it, Dr. Halvin whispered. By the ancients, they are actually doing it. Minutes passed. The longest minutes of Yargoth's life. Every second, he expected to see the human ship's signature vanish from the sensors. Every second, it remained. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. This is impossible, Dr. Halvin said again. But his tone had changed from disbelief to wonder. Commander, Krelnix called out. The Defiant Hope has reached the Wandering Star's position. They appear to be docking. The bridge erupted in astonished chatter. Yargoth silenced it with a gesture. Can we raise them on communications? Negative, the communications officer replied. The zone's interference is too strong. We can only track their position. And so they waited again, watching 2 green dots on the sensor display, deep in the heart of the Forbidden Zone. Together now. 30 minutes passed, an hour. Yargoth imagined what was happening inside those ships. Were they transferring crew? Making repairs? Or had the Defiant Hope's luck simply run out and both crews were now dying together? Movement! Krelnix announced suddenly. Both ships are active. They are moving toward the zone's edge. Yargoth leaned forward, gripping his armrest. Show me. The tactical display zoomed in. The Defiant Hope was towing the Wandering Star, both ships moving in that same strange weaving pattern. Like dancers following music only they could hear. They are coming out, someone whispered. The fleet watched in absolute silence as the 2 human ships made their way through the chaos. Progress was slow. The zone seemed to fight them with every meter, throwing gravitational waves and radiation spikes at them. But still they came, steady and determined. An hour later they crossed the boundary. The Defiant Hope and the Wandering Star emerged from the Forbidden Zone together. Both ships looked battered. Hulls showed scorch marks and stress fractures, but they were intact. They were whole. They were alive. The communications channel erupted with cheers from the assembled fleet. Ships from a dozen species celebrating the impossible achievement they had just witnessed. Captain Chen's face appeared on the view screen again. She looked exhausted, sweat beading on her forehead, but she was smiling. Defiant Hope to Council Fleet. Mission successful. We have recovered the Wandering Star and all crew members, requesting medical support and engineering assistance. Yargoth found himself smiling too, his sharp teeth showing. Granted, Captain Chen, well done. Exceptionally well done. As medical ships moved forward to assist, Yargoth turned to Dr. Halvin. The physicist looked like his entire understanding of the universe had just been shaken. How? Dr. Halvin asked simply. Yargoth looked at the 2 human ships, battered but triumphant. Because they refused to accept that it could not be done. Because they adapted where we tried to resist. Because they value their people more than they fear the unknown. He paused, watching as the Wandering Star's crew began transferring to the medical ships. Perhaps, Yargoth said quietly, the humans have something to teach us after all. The medical bay of the council station hummed with activity. Doctors from 5 different species moved between beds where the crew of the Wandering Star lay under observation. Each crew member was connected to monitoring equipment, their vital signs displayed on screens that flickered with data the medical staff still struggled to interpret. Dr. Velsina, chief medical officer of the station, stood over the bed of Dr. James Morrison, the Wandering Star's captain and chief scientist. She was Velkarn, her crystalline body refracting light in concerned patterns as she reviewed his readings for the 5th time. This makes no sense, she muttered, her translated voice carrying frustration. No sense at all. Morrison looked up at her with tired but amused eyes. He was a middle-aged human with gray threading through his brown hair and deep lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. What's the problem, Doc? The problem, Velsina said, gesturing at the monitors, is that you should be dead. All of you. The radiation exposure alone should have destroyed your cellular structure. The gravity distortions should have torn your bodies apart at the molecular level. The temporal fluctuations should have aged you decades or reduced you to infants. She paused, her crystalline form flickering with confusion. Instead, you are healthier than most humans I have examined. You show no signs of degradation, no cellular damage, no temporal displacement. It is as if the Forbidden Zone never touched you. Morrison smiled. That warm expression that Velsina was learning was typical of humans when they knew something others did not. The zone touched us, Doc. We felt every second of it. But we are still here. How? The question came from Fleet Commander Yargoth, who entered the medical bay with long strides. Krelnix and Dr. Halvin followed close behind. How did you survive what has killed thousands? Morrison sat up in his bed, despite Velsina's protests. Commander, may I ask you a question first? Yargoth nodded. What do you know about human psychology? The question clearly caught Yargoth off guard. Very little. Your species is still new to us. Then let me teach you something important, Morrison said. Humans have a unique relationship with reality. We are perhaps the galaxy's greatest optimists and the most stubborn beings you will ever meet. When we are told something is impossible, our first instinct is not to accept it. Our first instinct is to prove it wrong. Dr. Halvin's form flickered with interest. You are describing a psychological trait. But the zone operates on physical principles. Psychology cannot change physics, and cannot it? Morrison asked. He gestured to one of his crew members, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Kimura, who was sitting up in a nearby bed. Sarah, tell them about the quantum observation problem. Kimura nodded, pushing her black hair behind her ears. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation affects the outcome of events at the subatomic level. The observer is not separate from the experiment. They are part of it. What you expect to see influences what you actually see. We know this, Dr. Halvin said, but that only applies to the quantum level, not to macro-scale physics. That is what everyone believed, Morrison agreed, until we entered the Forbidden Zone. Tell me, Dr. Halvin, what did your scientists expect to find in the zone? Chaos, the physicist replied immediately. Complete breakdown of physical laws. Destruction of matter and energy. And that is exactly what you found, Morrison said. Every probe you sent in was destroyed within minutes. Every ship that entered fell apart. Because you expected it to happen, your instruments were designed to measure destruction. Your shields were built to resist annihilation. Everything about your approach assumed failure. Yargoth felt his scales prickle. You are suggesting the zone responds to expectation? That it reads minds? Not minds exactly, Morrison said, but conscious observation, yes. The Forbidden Zone is not just a region of unstable spacetime. It is a region where consciousness and reality interact more directly than anywhere else in the known universe. What you believe about the zone affects how the zone behaves. Velsina made a sound of disbelief. That is mysticism, not science, is it? Morrison challenged. Let me show you something. He pulled out a data tablet that had been cleared by the medical staff. On it, he brought up recordings from the Wandering Star's sensor logs. This is what we found in the zone. Watch carefully. The screen showed swirling chaos at first, colors that should not exist, shapes that hurt to look at, space folding in impossible ways. But then as they watched, patterns began to emerge, mathematical patterns, fractals, sequences. The zone is not random, Morrison explained. It is complex, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But not random. It follows rules. Strange rules, quantum rules, rules that do not apply in normal space. But rules nonetheless, Dr. Halvin stared at the display. These patterns, I have seen them before. In theoretical papers about quantum consciousness. About the role of observation in shaping reality. Exactly, Morrison said with growing excitement. The Forbidden Zone is a place where the quantum rules that normally only apply to tiny particles apply to everything. Matter, energy, space, time, all of it is in a quantum state, undefined until observed, and the nature of that observation determines the outcome. So when we sent in probes expecting destruction, Krelnix said slowly, understanding dawning, we got destruction. Yes, Morrison confirmed. Your probes were designed to measure hostile environments. Your shields were built to resist annihilation. Every aspect of your technology assumed the worst. And in a place where expectation shapes reality, you got exactly what you expected. But we went in expecting to survive, Kimura added. We went in believing we could map the zone, study it, understand it. We designed our systems not to resist the zone, but to work with it, to adapt to it, to dance with it rather than fight it. Yargoth felt his world shifting. You are telling me that belief alone protected you? Not belief alone, Morrison corrected. We still needed the right technology, adaptive shields, flexible systems, quick-thinking pilots. But yes, our psychological approach was crucial. We did not enter the zone afraid of dying. We entered it curious about learning. That made all the difference. Ambassador Veltron entered the medical bay, moving with the slow dignity of his great age. I heard you had answers, he said to Morrison. I hope they are worth the 13 council members who have gathered in the conference room demanding explanations. Morrison stood, wobbling slightly. Velsina tried to push him back to bed, but he waved her off. I will tell the council everything we learned. But first they need to understand one crucial fact. Which is? Feltron asked. The Forbidden Zone was never meant to be forbidden, Morrison said. It was meant to be understood. Someone long ago created that region of space intentionally. They made a place where consciousness and reality interact, where observation shapes outcome, where the universe is more fluid, more responsive to intelligent will. The room fell silent. The Ancients, Yargoth breathed. You are saying the Ancients created the zone deliberately? I am certain of it, Morrison replied. And I think I know why. But that explanation should be given to the full council. Because what we found in the zone changes everything we thought we knew about the Ancients. About the nature of space-time, and about humanity's role in this galaxy. An hour later, the council chambers were packed. Representatives from every major species crowded the space, with dozens more joining via holographic link. The room buzzed with speculation and concern. Morrison stood at the central platform, looking small and fragile compared to the massive alien beings around him. His crew stood with him, 12 humans facing the judgment and curiosity of the galaxy. Fleet Commander Yargoth called the chamber to order. Dr. Morrison, you have claimed to have made discoveries within the Forbidden Zone. Discoveries that challenge our understanding of that place and its history. The Council is ready to hear your findings. Morrison took a deep breath. Honored Council members, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. 3 days ago, I would have thought it impossible myself. But we have proof. We have data. We have witnessed it with our own eyes. He activated the holographic display. The Forbidden Zone appeared above them, rotating slowly. The zone is not a natural phenomenon, Morrison began. It is a construct, a tool, created by the Ancients as a testing ground and training facility for something they called cognitive reality interface development. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. We found their facility deep in the zone's heart, Morrison continued. Partially intact, partially phased out of normal reality. The data we recovered tells an incredible story. The Ancients discovered that consciousness could affect reality at the quantum level. They theorized that with proper training and technology, intelligent beings could learn to shape space-time itself through focused thought and will. Preposterous, someone called out. Is it? Morrison asked. We just proved that expectation affects the zone's behavior. That is cognitive reality interface on a basic level. The Ancients were trying to develop it to advanced levels. They were trying to create beings who could navigate quantum space-time as easily as you navigate normal space. Ambassador Silktar's hood flared, and they failed. That is why the zone is so dangerous. They lost control of their experiment. No, Morrison said firmly. They succeeded. At least partially. The zone became exactly what they wanted. A space where reality is fluid, where consciousness matters, where potential exceeds limitation. But then something happened. Something interrupted their work. He brought up a new image, ancient text, partially corrupted but readable by the translation matrix. This is from their last log entry. 3,000 years ago, they detected something coming from dark space, something that fed on reality itself, consuming matter and energy and leaving only void. The Ancients knew they could not fight it with conventional means. So they weaponized the zone. The chamber fell into absolute silence. They turned their cognitive reality training facility into a weapon system, Morrison explained. A defense grid that could destabilize reality in specific regions, making it impossible for the void entities to exist there. But activating the weapon required conscious will. It required minds that could navigate quantum space-time. Minds trained in cognitive reality interface. They died before they could finish the training, Veltron said quietly, understanding dawning in his ancient eyes. Exactly, Morrison confirmed. The void entities came before they were ready. The Ancients activated the weapon system at partial strength, using their untrained minds. It worked, but at terrible cost. The strain killed them. The weapon went dormant, and over 3,000 years the galaxy forgot what the zone really was. You declared it forbidden and stayed away, never realizing it was not a disaster but a defense system waiting to be properly activated. Yargoth stood slowly. You are saying the weapon is still there? Still functional? Yes, Morrison said. And more than that, the void entities are returning. We detected traces of them at the zone's edge. Faint, Distant but unmistakable. The weapon system detected them too. That is why it has been becoming more active recently, why the zone has been expanding slowly over the past century. It is warming up, preparing to defend against the threat again. Fear rippled through the chamber. Beings who had lived for centuries, civilizations that had endured for millions of years, all felt the primal terror of predators returning. But this time, Morrison said, his voice rising with hope, we can do it right. Humans, it seems, have a natural aptitude for cognitive reality interface. Our stubbornness, our refusal to accept limitations, our constant questioning of what is possible. These are not flaws. They are exactly the traits needed to navigate quantum space-time. He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes across species. The ancients tried to create beings who could operate in the zone. They failed because they approached it as a technological problem. But humans, we have been practicing cognitive reality navigation our whole history. Every time we imagined the impossible and made it real. Every time we refused to accept limits and broke through them. We have been training for this without knowing it. Captain Chen stepped forward. The Council has the knowledge. We have the aptitude. Together we can finish what the ancients started. We can properly activate the defense grid. We can protect the galaxy from what is coming. Veltron rose slowly, his ancient form radiating authority. You are asking us to trust humanity with a weapon of unimaginable power. A species we have known for only 15 years? Morrison met his gaze steadily. I am asking you to let us help save the galaxy. Because when the void entities return, your conventional weapons will be useless. Only the ancient weapon can stop them, and only humans can operate it. The chamber erupted into debate. Some species argued for trying to operate the weapon themselves. Others wanted to destroy it rather than let anyone use it. Still others insisted the threat was not real, that the data was misinterpreted. But Yargoth looked at Morrison and his crew. 12 humans who had gone into the impossible and returned with answers. Who had survived where thousands had died, who had found hope in a place of despair. I believe them, Yargoth announced, his voice cutting through the chaos, and I propose we give them a chance to prove it. The debate would continue for hours. But in that moment, Morrison knew they had won. The galaxy would let humanity try. They would return to the Forbidden Zone, but this time they would not go to study it. They would go to master it. The debate in the council chambers had raged for 3 days. 3 days of arguing, analyzing, and accusations. Now, in a private conference room deep within the station, a smaller group had gathered to make the real decisions, the ones that would shape the galaxy's future. Fleet Commander Yargoth sat at the head of the long table. To his right sat Ambassador Veltron and Dr. Halvan, representing the scientific and diplomatic wings of the Council. To his left sat Dr. Morrison and Captain Chen, representing humanity. Around the rest of the table sat representatives from 6 other major species, each with their own agenda and concerns. We must be clear about what we are discussing, Ambassador Veltron began, his aged voice steady. Dr. Morrison proposes that we not only allow humans to activate an ancient weapon of unknown power, but that we actively help them do so. This is not a small request. It is the only logical course of action, Dr. Halvan argued. His crystalline form pulsed with urgency. The data Morrison retrieved is genuine. I have verified it myself. The void entities are returning. Our conventional weapons were useless against them 3,000 years ago. They will be useless again, if they even exist, interjected Ambassador Kreenall of the Prosperity Union. Her feathered crest lay flat against her skull, a sign of deep skepticism. We have only Morrison's interpretation of ancient data. Data that is 3,000 years old and heavily corrupted. Perhaps the threat is exaggerated. Perhaps it no longer exists. Morrison leaned forward. The zone's expansion is not exaggerated. Your own sensors have tracked it. The weapon system is activating on its own, because it has detected the threat.
The ancients built their systems well.
They do not activate without cause. Or perhaps, suggested Council Member Thexan, his insectoid mandibles clicking thoughtfully, the weapon system is malfunctioning after 3 millennia of dormancy. Perhaps we should be finding ways to shut it down, not activate it further. Shutting it down is not an option, Dr. Halvan said firmly. Morrison's data shows the activation sequence is already in progress. It cannot be stopped, only controlled. If we do nothing, the weapon will activate itself at partial strength, just as it did when the ancients died. The result could be catastrophic. Yargoth had been silent, listening to all sides. Now he spoke. Captain Chen, your people went into the zone and survived. You proved that humans can navigate it. But operating a weapon system is different from simply surviving. How do you know you can control it? Chen met his gaze without flinching. We do not know for certain, Commander. But we have studied the ancient facility's data. The control systems are designed for consciousness-based operation. They require operators who can think in quantum terms, who can hold contradictory ideas simultaneously, who can adapt instantly to changing conditions. These are human strengths. They are also human weaknesses, Crusade pointed out. Your inability to accept limits has nearly destroyed you several times in your own history. Your wars, your environmental catastrophes, your reckless experiments. You admit yourselves that you are stubborn and refuse to accept the impossible. Such traits could make you dangerous with an ancient weapon. Morrison did not deny it. You are right. We are reckless sometimes. We have made terrible mistakes. But we also learn from them. We adapt, we survive. And right now the galaxy needs species who can do the impossible. Because the impossible is coming. Beltran shifted in his seat, his ancient bones creaking. There is another concern. One that no one has spoken aloud yet. He looked around the table. If we give humans the ability to operate the ancient weapon, we give them power over the galaxy. Power to destroy as well as protect. How do we know they will not use it against us? The question hung in the air like a blade. Chen's jaw tightened. We came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge, not conquest. Every action we have taken has been to help, not harm. So far, Crusade said softly. But power changes people. It changes species. We have seen it happen before. Yargoth thought of the human principle Chen had mentioned. No one left behind. It spoke of loyalty and courage. But loyalty to whom? To the galaxy or only to other humans? Krelnix, who had been observing from a corner of the room, suddenly spoke up. If I may, I have been studying human culture since the Wandering Star first entered the zone. I have read their histories, their literature, their philosophies. And I have found something interesting. All eyes turned to him. Humans have a concept they call power corrupts, Krelnix continued. They are aware of the danger of power. They fear it themselves. Their entire governmental systems are built on checks and balances, on limiting the power of any one individual or group. They do not trust themselves with too much power. That is supposed to reassure us? Thexan asked. Yes, Krelnix replied, because it means they will accept limits. They will accept oversight. Not because we force them, but because they recognize the wisdom in it. Morrison nodded slowly. Krelnix is right. We do not want unlimited power. We want to help protect the galaxy. If the Council requires oversight, monitoring, shared control, we will agree to it. We are not asking for dominance. We are asking for partnership. Partnership, Beltran repeated the word thoughtfully. An interesting concept. The ancients worked alone on their weapon. Perhaps that was their mistake. Perhaps what is needed is cooperation between species. Human adaptability combined with Council wisdom. A joint operation, Dr. Halvin said, excitement building in his voice. Human operators for the consciousness-based controls, but Council scientists managing the power systems, monitoring safety protocols, making strategic decisions together. Yargoth felt something shift in his thinking. This could work. This could actually work. But Crusade was not convinced. We still do not know if the threat is real. If we commit resources to this, take this enormous risk, and the void entities never come, we will have wasted everything. Worse, we will have created a weapon for no reason. Then let us verify the threat, Morrison suggested. Send a deep space probe to the coordinates where the ancient data indicates the void entities originate. See if the threat is real before we commit fully. It was a reasonable suggestion. Too reasonable to refuse, agreed, Beltran said. We will send a probe. If it confirms the threat, we proceed with the joint operation. If not, we reconsider our options. The others nodded one by one. Even Crusade reluctantly agreed. There is one more thing, Yargoth said. We need to be clear about the cost. Operating the ancient weapon will require humans to spend extended time in the zone. The ancients died from the strain. Morrison, will your people survive where the ancients did not? Morrison's expression grew somber. We do not know. The ancients were not prepared. We will be. We will train. We will develop better protection. But the honest answer is that we do not know if we can survive long-term exposure to operating the weapon. It may cost us our lives. And you are willing to pay that price? Yargoth asked. If the alternative is letting the galaxy be consumed by void entities, Chen answered. Yes, we are willing. Yargoth respected that. Fear was natural, but courage was choosing to act despite the fear. The humans had that courage. The probe was launched 2 days later. It was the fastest, most advanced deep space probe the Council had ever built, equipped with every sensor and detector imaginable. Its destination was a region of dark space that had never been explored, where the ancient data suggested the void entities originated. The probe would take weeks to reach its destination. Weeks of waiting and wondering. During that time, Morrison and his team worked with Council scientists to decode more of the ancient facility's data. They learned how the weapon worked, at least in theory. The zone could be focused, directed, used to destabilize reality in specific regions of space. Any matter that entered those regions would simply cease to exist, broken down to quantum foam. It was a terrible weapon, a weapon that unmade reality itself. The ancients called it the unraveling, Morrison explained to a group of Council scientists. They could point it at an enemy fleet and simply erase it from existence. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Horrifying, Dr. Halvin whispered. Yes, Morrison agreed, which is why they only used it as a last resort. Against an enemy that could not be fought conventionally. The void entities consume normal matter and energy, but they cannot consume quantum foam. They cannot exist where reality is unstable. The unraveling was the only thing that could stop them. As they learned more about the weapon, they also learned more about the ancients themselves. They had been a peaceful species, explorers and scientists. They had never wanted to build weapons. But when the void entities came, they had no choice. The ancients had debated just as the Council was debating now. Some had wanted to run, to evacuate to another galaxy. Some had wanted to try negotiation. Some had wanted to destroy the weapon rather than risk using it. In the end, they had chosen to fight, and they had won, but at the cost of their own extinction. Krelnix found this history in a damaged data core. When he shared it with the Council, the debate shifted. The ancients sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy, Veltron said quietly. They paid the ultimate price so that species like us could exist. Can we do less when the threat returns? We are not asking the ancients' sacrifice to be in vain, Chen added. We are asking for the chance to finish what they started. To use their weapon as they intended, but with the benefit of 3,000 years of advancement. With partnership instead of isolation. With preparation instead of desperation. 3 weeks after the probe launched, it reached its destination. The data it sent back silenced every remaining skeptic. The void entities were real. And they were massive. The probe's sensors detected them at the edge of dark space. Beings that existed partially outside normal reality. They fed on matter and energy, leaving trails of absolute nothingness behind them. And they were moving. Slowly, but inevitably toward the galaxy. The probe calculated their speed and trajectory. At their current rate, they would reach the outer rim of the galaxy in 8 years. They would reach the core systems in 30. We have time, Kreenal said, though her crest trembled. We can prepare. Build fleets. Develop new weapons. We can try, Dr. Halvin replied. But the ancients had technology far beyond ours, and their conventional weapons were useless. We need the unraveling. We need humans to operate it. The final vote was held that evening. Every council member was present, either physically or through holographic link. The chamber was silent as Veltron called for the decision. All in favor of authorizing the Joint Human Council operation to activate and control the ancient weapon system known as the Unraveling. Indicate now. Lights appeared across the chamber. Blue for yes, red for number. When the count finished, the result was clear. 73% in favor. The operation was approved. Yargoth stood to make the announcement. Dr. Morrison, Captain Chen, the Council has voted to proceed. We will work together to activate the Unraveling. We will train human operators and provide Council support. We will face this threat together. Morrison and Chen stood as well, accepting the responsibility they had asked for. We will not let you down, Morrison promised. We will do everything in our power to succeed, Chen added. As the chamber emptied, Krelnix approached Morrison. Dr. Morrison, a question. Of course, you knew the probe would confirm the threat. You were certain of it. How? Morrison smiled sadly. Because the ancients' data was too detailed, too specific. No one makes up that kind of information. And because the zone's activation sequence had already begun. The weapon does not wake itself for imaginary threats. You are not worried the vote would fail? I was terrified it would fail, Morrison admitted. But I had faith in the Council's wisdom. You have survived for millions of years by making the right choices when it mattered most. I trusted you would make the right choice again. Krelnix felt his heart swell with an emotion he could not name. These humans, so young, so reckless, so brave, they had faith in the Council, and now the Council had faith in them. When do we begin? Krelnix asked. Morrison looked toward the viewport where the Forbidden Zone hung in the distance, waiting. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow we return to the zone, and this time we do not just survive it, we master it. 6 months had passed since the Council's vote, 6 months of intensive preparation, training, and adaptation. The Forbidden Zone no longer looked the same. Where once only warning beacons marked its boundary, now a massive station orbited at the edge, bristling with sensors and equipment. The Guardian Station, they called it, humanity's gift to the galaxy, built with Council resources and human determination. Dr. Morrison stood in the station's observation deck, watching the swirling chaos of the zone through reinforced windows. He looked older now. The months of training had taken their toll. His hair had gone fully gray and new lines etched his face. But his eyes still held that spark of determination that had carried him into the impossible. Captain Chen joined him at the window. She too showed the marks of their work. Her movements were slower, more careful, as if she carried an invisible weight. The final team is ready, she said quietly. 24 humans, 12 Council support personnel, all trained, all prepared as we can be, Morrison corrected gently. They had learned much in 6 months. The ancient facility had yielded more secrets. They understood now how to interface with the weapon controls, how to direct the Unraveling's power, how to create stable zones in the chaos. But understanding was not the same as mastering. The ancients had spent decades developing their skills. The humans had 6 months. It would have to be enough. Krelnix approached, carrying data tablets. The latest readings from the deep space probes. The void entities have accelerated. They will reach the outer rim in 5 years instead of 8. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Time was running out faster than expected. Then we proceed tonight, he decided. No more delays. Fleet Commander, Yargoth entered the observation deck, his massive form moving with the careful grace of a warrior. The fleet is in position, 60 ships forming a defensive perimeter. If something goes wrong, we will be ready. If something goes wrong, your ships will not matter, Dr. Halvin said, floating in behind Yargoth. The physicist's crystalline form had grown dimmer over the months, dimmed by stress and worry. The Unraveling does not distinguish between friend and enemy. If the humans lose control, everything within 1,000 light years could be erased. We will not lose control, Chen said firmly. But Morrison heard the uncertainty beneath her confidence. They all felt it. They were about to attempt something that had killed the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Ambassador Veltron was the last to arrive, moving slowly with the weight of his years. The Council is watching, every species, every world. They pray for your success. They fear your failure. But most of all, they hope. You have given the galaxy hope, Dr. Morrison. Whatever happens tonight, remember that. Morrison nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The team assembled in the launch bay, 24 humans in specialized suits designed to help them survive the zone's effects. Each suit was a masterpiece of combined human and Council technology. Adaptive shielding, consciousness enhancement systems, real-time biometric monitoring. But in the end, it would come down to the human mind's ability to bend without breaking. Morrison addressed them one final time. You all know what we face. You all know the risks. The ancients died doing what we are about to attempt, but we have advantages they did not. We have their research, we have Council support, and we have something uniquely human. We have the ability to look at the impossible and say, "Watch me." A few nervous laughs rippled through the group. We will split into 3 teams, Morrison continued. Team Alpha will activate the primary control systems. Team Beta will manage power distribution. Team Gamma will handle targeting and focus. I will coordinate from the central control node. Captain Chen will manage the anchor point here on the station, maintaining our connection to normal space. He looked at each face, young and old, scientists and pilots, soldiers and engineers, all volunteers, all knowing they might not return. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. Adapt to what the zone shows you. And no matter what happens, we do not give up. The galaxy is counting on us. No pressure then, someone joked weakly. Morrison smiled. No pressure at all. Let's go save the universe. The three ships launched together. The Wandering Star, now heavily modified. The Defiant Hope, bearing scars from its first rescue mission, and the new vessel, Resolution, built specifically for this purpose. They flew in formation toward the zone's boundary. As they crossed into the Forbidden Zone, Morrison felt reality shift around him. It was like diving into water, except the water was space-time itself. Colors became sounds, thoughts became visible, time stretched and compressed. But this time, he was ready for it. They all were. Alpha Team, proceed to the ancient facility, Morrison ordered. His voice sounded strange in the zone, echoing with harmonics that should not exist. The ships dove deeper, following the path Morrison's first expedition had mapped. The zone fought them, throwing gravitational waves and radiation spikes, but the adaptive shields held, flowing with the chaos rather than resisting it. They reached the ancient facility after what felt like hours, but measured as only 17 minutes on their chronometers. Time was unreliable here. The facility hung in the heart of the zone, a massive structure that phased in and out of reality. It was beautiful and terrifying. Crystalline spires twisted into impossible geometries. Energy flowed in patterns that hurt the mind to follow. And at its center, the control node pulsed with dormant power. Morrison's team docked and entered the facility. Inside was worse than outside. The walls seemed to breathe. The floor rippled underfoot. Doorways led to spaces that were larger inside than outside, but Morrison had been here before. He knew the way. They reached the central control chamber. It was a vast sphere, its walls covered in ancient symbols that shifted and changed. In the center floated a platform, and on that platform sat the control interface. Morrison approached it carefully. The interface looked organic, like it had grown rather than been built. It pulsed with faint light, waiting for someone to activate it. Team Beta report, Morrison said into his communicator. Power systems located, came the response. They are massive, bigger than anything we have ever seen. When we activate, the energy output will be visible from normal space. Team Gamma, targeting arrays found. They are functional, but require calibration. We need at least an hour. Morrison checked his chronometer. In normal space, an hour. In the zone, who knew? Begin calibration. We will start the activation sequence. He placed his hands on the control interface. It felt warm, almost alive. The ancient symbols began to glow brighter, responding to his touch. And then he felt it. The weapon's consciousness. Not intelligent, but aware. It had been waiting for someone to give it purpose again. Waiting to fulfill the function for which it was created. Morrison's mind merged with the system. Suddenly he could see everything. The entire zone spread out in his awareness like a vast living thing. He could feel its currents, its eddies, its potential. He understood now why the ancients had needed cognitive reality interface training. This was not like controlling a machine. This was like becoming the machine. Morrison, your life signs are spiking. Chen's voice came through the communicator filled with alarm. Your neural activity is off the charts. I am fine, Morrison managed to say. Better than fine, I understand now. The weapon is not separate from the zone. It is the zone. And when I control it, I control reality itself. That is what killed the ancients, Dr. Halvin warned from the Guardian station. The strain of maintaining that level of consciousness integration. You must be careful, but Morrison was beyond careful. He was beyond fear. In this moment, connected to the unraveling, he felt like a god, and that terrified him. He pulled back slightly, remembering his humanity. remembering the dangers of power. This was why they needed oversight, why they needed limitations, why they needed each other. Team Beta, begin power flow. Slowly, energy surged through the facility. The ancient systems came fully online for the first time in 3,000 years. The zone responded, stabilizing around the facility. For 100 kilometers in every direction, reality became solid and predictable. It is working, Krelnix reported from the Guardian station. The zone is stabilizing. The weapon is coming online. Team Gamma, status on targeting? Calibration complete. We can focus the unraveling anywhere within 200 light years. Beyond that, accuracy decreases. Morrison nodded, though no one could see him. Good, now we test it. Small scale. I'm going to create a targeted instability field 1 light year from our position. Uninhabited space. Just to prove we can control it. He focused his will through the interface. The weapon responded. Reality bent to his intention. 1 light year away in empty space, the unraveling activated. A sphere of quantum foam appeared, a region where matter could not exist. It lasted for 3 seconds, then collapsed back to normal space. Success, Team Gamma reported. Clean activation. Precise control. No overflow. Morrison felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. They could control the ancient weapon, but the celebration was premature. Alarms screamed across all channels. The deep space probes had detected something. The void entities had sensed the weapon's activation, and they were responding. They are accelerating, Krelnix reported, his voice shaking. All of them. They are changing course. They are heading directly toward us. How long until they arrive? Yargoth demanded. At their new speed. 6 months. Maybe less. The chamber fell silent. 6 months. They had expected years to prepare. Now they had months. Morrison looked at the control interface, still pulsing beneath his hands. The weapon was ready. But were they? We cannot maintain this level of control for 6 months, Dr. Halvin said grimly. The strain will kill the operators long before then. Then we need more operators, Chen said. More humans trained in cognitive reality interface. We need to create shifts, rotations, so no one burns out. That will take time we do not have, Veltron pointed out. Morrison had an idea. A terrible, dangerous idea, but it might work. We do not need to maintain control constantly, he said slowly. We only need it when the void entities arrive. Until then, we can leave the weapon on standby. But we need to establish a permanent presence here, a guardian force that can activate the weapon at a moment's notice. You are talking about people living in the zone, Yargoth said. Permanently? Yes, Morrison confirmed. Humans in rotating shifts, spending weeks or months in the zone, then rotating out to recover. It will still be dangerous. It will still take a toll, but it is survivable. You do not know that, Dr. Halvin protested. No, Morrison agreed, but I am willing to find out. We need volunteers. Humans willing to become the guardians of the unraveling, to spend their lives maintaining the weapon that protects the galaxy. Chen spoke from the Guardian station. You will have volunteers. I will be the first. Every human who came on this mission knew the cost. We are prepared to pay it. Over the next weeks, the Guardian program was established. 50 humans volunteered for the first rotation. They would spend 3 months in the zone, maintaining the weapon systems, training with the interface, preparing for the day the void entities arrived. Morrison remained as the primary controller, but others were trained as backups. They learned to merge their consciousness with the weapon, to feel the zone's currents, to direct the unraveling's terrible power. It was hard. Harder than anything they had ever done. The zone wore at them day by day. Some could not handle it and had to rotate out early. Others adapted, growing stronger in their connection to the weapon, and as they worked, the void entities drew closer. 5 months later, they arrived. The deep space probes detected them first. Massive forms moving through the darkness, consuming everything in their path. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, all heading toward the galaxy like a tide of annihilation. Morrison stood at the control interface, surrounded by his team. Outside, Yargoth's fleet waited. On the Guardian station, Chen coordinated with Council forces across the galaxy. Everyone was ready. This is it, Morrison said quietly. Everything we have worked for comes down to this moment. He placed his hands on the interface and connected fully with the weapon. His consciousness expanded, touching the zone, feeling its power. He was no longer just James Morrison, human scientist. He was the unraveling itself, ancient and terrible and necessary. I have targeting lock on the lead void entities, Team Gamma reported. Awaiting your command. Morrison took a deep breath. Fire. The unraveling activated. Reality itself bent to Morrison's will. Across 100 light-years of space, regions of quantum foam appeared. The void entities entered those regions and simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not killed, unmade. Returned to the quantum probability from which all things came. But more came behind them. Hundreds more. Morrison fired again and again. Each activation took a piece of him. Each unraveling of reality unraveled his own mind slightly. He felt himself spreading too thin, becoming too much a part of the weapon and not enough himself. Morrison, you need to pull back, Chen urged. Let the backup operators take over. Not yet, Morrison gritted out. Not until we stop them all. For 6 hours the battle raged. Morrison and his team, wielding the power of the ancients, fought against the void entities. Reality became their weapon, space-time their battlefield. They were winning. Slowly, impossibly, they were winning. But Morrison could feel himself failing. His connection to his own humanity was fraying. Soon he would be lost in the weapon, unable to return. James, Chen's voice cut through the chaos. You need to stop. You have done enough. Let others finish this, Morrison wanted to argue, wanted to keep fighting, but he heard the truth in her words. If he continued, he would become what the ancients had feared. A being of pure consciousness merged with the weapon, no longer human. He pulled back. With an effort that felt like tearing his own soul, he disconnected from the interface. The backup operators took over. They continued the fight, working in coordinated shifts, preventing any one person from burning out. Morrison collapsed, barely aware as medical teams rushed to him. He had pushed too far, stayed connected too long, but it had been necessary. The void entities were breaking. Their numbers were thinning. 3 days later it was over. The last void entity was unmade. The galaxy was safe. Morrison woke in the medical bay of the Guardian station. Chen sat beside his bed, her hand holding his. Did we win? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Chen smiled, tears in her eyes. We won. The void entities are gone. The galaxy is safe. The cost? High, she admitted. 12 humans suffered severe neural damage from weapon interface. They will recover, but they can never connect to the weapon again. You were the worst. You almost did not come back. Morrison closed his eyes. 12 people. 12 lives forever changed. But billions of lives saved. Was it worth it? He asked. Only you can answer that, Chen replied. Morrison thought about it. The pain, the sacrifice, the risks. And he thought about the galaxy full of species who would never know how close they came to annihilation, who would live and love and dream because a handful of humans had been willing to pay the price. Yes, he said finally, it was worth it. 6 months later, the Guardian program was fully operational. The Forbidden Zone had been renamed the Guardian Threshold. 50 humans rotated through in shifts, maintaining the unraveling, keeping it ready in case the void entities ever returned. It was not the life any of them had imagined. But it was necessary, and they did it willingly. Krelnick stood in the observation deck watching a new shift of Guardians depart for the zone. He thought about that first day, when he had detected an impossible ship in an impossible place. He had never imagined it would lead to this. Yargoth joined him at the window. The Council has officially recognized humanity's unique contribution to galactic security. Your status has been elevated. You are no longer junior members. You are Guardians. They paid a high price for that honor, Krelnick said quietly. They did, Yargoth agreed, but they paid it willingly. That is what makes them remarkable. Not their technology, not their stubborn refusal to accept limits, but their willingness to sacrifice for others. Krelnick watched the ships disappear into the swirling chaos of the Guardian threshold. I was wrong about them, Commander. When they first entered the zone, I thought they were reckless fools. But they were not foolish. They were brave. There is a difference. Yes, Yargoth said, there is. And the galaxy is fortunate that they chose to use that bravery to protect us all. Dr. Morrison, recovered enough to walk but forever marked by his time merged with the weapon, entered the observation deck. He moved to the window and stood beside Krelnick and Yargoth. The new Guardians look ready, Morrison observed. watching the ships navigate into the zone with practiced ease. They have learned from the best, Yargoth said, gesturing to Morrison. Your training program has produced exceptional operators. Morrison shook his head slightly. I just taught them what the zone taught me. To adapt, to flow, to hold on to their humanity even when merged with something greater. Krelnix turned to face the human scientist. Dr. Morrison, I have been meaning to ask you something. That first time you entered the zone, before we knew what it was, before we understood the danger, were you afraid? Morrison considered the question carefully. Terrified, he admitted. But fear is not the enemy. Letting fear stop you from doing what needs to be done, that is the enemy. We were afraid, yes, but we were also curious. And we believed that some questions were worth the risk of finding answers. And now, Krelnix pressed, after everything that has happened, knowing what you know now, would you still have entered the zone that first time? Morrison looked out at the swirling chaos that had changed his life, that had changed the galaxy. The place where humans had proven themselves, where they had found their purpose among the stars. Without hesitation, he said firmly, every time. Ambassador Veltron's holographic form appeared in the observation deck. Dr. Morrison, the Council has requested your presence for a ceremony. They wish to honor the human guardians. Morrison felt uncomfortable with the idea of ceremony and honor. They had not done this for glory. They had done it because it needed to be done. But Chen's voice came through his communicator, as if reading his thoughts. James, let them honor us. Not for our sake, but for theirs. The galaxy needs to remember what was almost lost. They need to remember who stood between them and annihilation. It gives them hope. Morrison sighed but nodded. Tell the Council I will be there. As Veltron's hologram faded, Morrison turned back to the window one last time. The Guardian threshold pulsed with energy, beautiful and deadly. A reminder of what humanity had accomplished. A warning of what still lurked in the darkness beyond the stars. Commander Yargoth, Morrison said, I have been thinking about the future, about what comes next. Go on, Yargoth encouraged. The void entities may return someday, or some other threat may emerge. The galaxy will always face dangers, but now we know that those dangers can be faced, that the impossible can be overcome. We proved that. You proved that, Yargoth corrected gently. No, Morrison said firmly. We proved it together. Humans could not have done this alone. We had the adaptability, yes, but you had the knowledge, the resources, the wisdom of ages. Together we achieved what neither of us could have done separately. He looked at Yargoth and Krelnix. That is the real lesson of the Guardian threshold, not that humans are special, but that cooperation between different species, different ways of thinking, different strengths, that is what makes us strong. The ancients failed because they worked alone. We succeeded because we worked together. Krelnix felt his heart swell with emotion. You have given us more than just protection from the void entities, Dr. Morrison. You have given us a new way of seeing ourselves, of seeing each other. A soft chime indicated another shift rotation was complete. The Guardians who had spent 3 months in the zone were returning home. Morrison watched their ships emerge, knowing that each person aboard had changed. The zone changed everyone who spent time there. It was unavoidable, but they would heal. They would rest. And when their turn came again, they would return to the Guardian threshold and resume their watch. Because that was what Guardians did. Captain Chen entered the observation deck, moving to stand beside Morrison. She took his hand, and they stood together, watching the endless dance of chaos and order at the threshold. Do you ever regret it? Chen asked quietly. Going into the zone that first time? Morrison thought about the question. He thought about the pain, the sacrifice, the permanent changes to his mind and body. He thought about the 12 Guardians who would never fully recover. He thought about the fear and the struggle. But he also thought about the billions of lives saved, the civilizations that would continue to exist, the children who would grow up never knowing how close they had come to oblivion, the future that had been preserved. No, he said simply. No regrets. Veltron's hologram appeared again. "The council is ready for you, Dr. Morris and Captain Chen. The ceremony will begin shortly." Morrison and Chen turned from the window. As they walked toward the door, Morrison glanced back one more time at the Guardian threshold. It no longer looked forbidden to him. It looked like home, the place where humanity had found its purpose, the place where the impossible had become possible. And in the distance, beyond the swirling chaos, the stars shone bright and clear. The galaxy they had saved, the future they had secured. Morrison smiled and walked forward into that future, ready for whatever challenges it might bring, because he had learned the most important lesson of all. When faced with the impossible, when standing at the edge of the forbidden, when all logic says to turn back, sometimes the right choice is to step forward into the darkness, not because you are fearless, but because you have something worth fighting for. The galaxy was worth fighting for, and humanity would always be ready to fight for it. No one left behind, not one single world, not one single species, not one single life. That was the human way. And now it was the galaxy's way too. The door closed behind them, and Krelnix and Yargoth were left alone in the observation deck. "They changed everything," Krelnix said softly. "Yes," Yargoth agreed. "They did. And we are all better for it." They stood in silence, watching the Guardian threshold, watching the human ships dance through the impossible chaos with grace and confidence. And in that moment, they understood what it meant to be truly alive, to face the unknown, to challenge the impossible, to stand together against the darkness, to be guardians. The end had become a beginning, the forbidden had become sacred, and humanity had shown the galaxy that some things really were worth any price: hope, courage, sacrifice, unity. These were the gifts humanity had given to the stars, and the stars in turn had welcomed them home.